Ironically, we thought voting for Trump would ward off the Great Reset. As it turns out, it's a backdoor Trojan horse for bringing it in.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for August 25th through September 1st, 2025, while supplies last. First this week, 1 ounce gold Britannia are just $60 over spot per ounce. Next, 1/10 ounce gold Canadian maples are only $35 over melt per coin. 1 ounce silver maples are just $2.89 over spot. And 1 ounce silver kangaroos are only $2.79 over spot per ounce. And with a 250 ounce monster box, they're the lowest priced monster box available. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We're delighted to have this well-read returning guest. Michael Rectenwald is a constitutional expert. He's a teacher of politics, and he's a struggler for those who are standing up against overreach by centralized power. He's the author of many books, including The Great Reset and The Struggle for Liberty, Unraveling the Globalist Agenda. Michael, thank you for returning back here on Liberty and Finance.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Duncan.
We're recording this on Friday, August 29th, 2025. We wanted to reach out to you specifically because you have written and spoken quite openly about the importance of liberty, and our channel being Liberty and Finance, it's a great fit. One of the questions that I have for you, the big one, is about the constitutionality of authoritarian actions being taken by the current administration, often in the name of freedom or democracy. Sometimes it boggles the mind, and we'll get into that. I guess the very first question we have is, how do you define authoritarianism in the context of American constitutional governance?
Well, basically, it is constitutional overreach or unconstitutionality is the basis that I would use for evaluating authoritarianism. I would think anything that invades against the first 10 amendments of the Constitution will be authoritarian by nature.
Do you believe that the current administration is operating within constitutional bounds, or if not, where is the line being crossed?
I think it's breaching constitutional bounds now. The line's being crossed in terms of speech, in terms of basically the First Amendment is the main issue right now. And I also see a lot of inklings that we're going to see Second Amendment breaches as well. Because of the school shooter, the church shooter that we just saw, and the calls now from the right for some kind of gun regulation checks and so forth, pre-crime type software technologies being rolled out, like Gideon, which will, basically scan the whole internet for everything that a single person has ever said, and will use that in order to take action before that person takes a supposed action. The founder of Gideon was just on Fox News saying this, and the right is welcoming it. And they're talking about making it difficult for people to get guns. They're going to use mental health issues to restrict gun usage. But the First Amendment is already being breached. The First Amendment is being breached by the Trump administration in its quest to squash so-called anti-Semitic speech. And this is being done. We saw international students, some of them actually residents of the United States, U.S. residents, being hauled off and taken off campus, arrested in these kind of dragnet ICE arrests. We saw students thrown out of the country over this, and the citizens are next. We're seeing the administration cracking down on Wikipedia, of all things. There's a new House committee that is dealing with this. I don't know if the committee is new, but it's put out a warning to Wikipedia. There's going to be an investigation of Wikipedia for so-called, and they're going to go to the level of the contributor and editors of Wikipedia, looking for anti-Semitic and anti-Israel speech. So this is brazenly a breach of the First Amendment. The United States government should have nothing to do with encyclopedias, with any kinds of speech. Really, it should not be regulating speech at all. And now they're going to crack down on Wikipedia for anti-Semitism, and there's been enormous indications from this administration that we're going to see a kind of Zionist crackdown on Americans in terms of speech. And you can mark my words on this, Dunnigan. There will be a crackdown on American citizens' speech over the so-called anti-Semitism, which is really any criticism of Israel. And we're going to see a sort of Zionist implementation using Palantir, Gideon, and these other surveillance technologies to track, trace, and compile the speech of individuals and to effectively go after them. So with the passage of the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, there's the possibility now that this can be invoked against citizens themselves.
Another area that you haven't emphasized yet is about federalism versus states' rights. We've had quite a uproar around the current administration ordering federal troops or National Guard troops into specific jurisdictions to restore what they consider acceptable levels of safety. I'm not saying safety is not a good thing. I'm just asking because we've seen wolf in sheep's clothing many times play out in history, not just recent history, but especially recently, when that's the cover story that's given for a one-directional ratcheting up of federal authority, as we did with the Patriot Act and so on. So how has the federal government under the current administration undermined the rights of the states or overstepped the 10th Amendment, in your view?
Yeah, I mean, they're overstepping it now with, they've already basically implemented martial law in D.C. With the use of the National Guard there to keep order, so-called. And Trump is also saying that Chicago is next. And so we're going to see the rollout of the National Guard in various states to keep order, and then the implementation of federal impositions on policing. And that is a breach of the 10th Amendment. We're looking at the use of federal, effectively military force in the United States, essentially a martial law being enacted. And that is outrageous. And the other way they've been violating the 10th Amendment is not allowing the self-determination of states regarding boycotts. We have been told by the Trump administration, I think there was a EO signed, that states, townships, and cities that boycott Israel will not receive federal funding. Now, this is, federal funding is one thing, but maybe these states and locations don't need federal funding for disaster relief. And we could talk about the fact that we should have more autonomy in these localities in the first place, that local government should be autonomous as much as possible, and that states and towns should not have to be relying on federal aid. But here we have federal aid being withheld based on a kind of discriminatory criterion of boycotting Israel. I mean, this is just unbelievable what we're seeing here. We're looking at the kind of Zionization of the United States government. I've never seen anything like it. The gloves are off. I'm not going to hold back here. We're looking at a kind of Zio state right now, where the United States is doing the bidding of Israel in all regards, including foreign and domestic policy.
One of the underlying principles in what you're describing is broader than just this particular political alliance, and that is this notion that the federal government, that people turn to the federal government in times of perceived distress or need and say, why can't they do something? Why can't the government do something? We had the British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher reminding us that the government does not have any money that it doesn't steal from its citizens. So be careful what you ask for, because the hand that gives is always over the hand that receives, and there's always a string attached or a trap behind the cheese. And yet I think that this is illustrative of that principle that you just said, is that at the local level, at the city level, the state level, we should strive to be not dependent on federal funding, because there will come paying the piper in terms of loss of autonomy, loss of sovereignty at the local level that comes from that dependence. And yet we see an ever increasing expansion of dependence on the federal government.
And centralized control, yeah.
They said that Obamacare was the largest expansion in the history of the country in a single action of the government in people's lives. We've heard Medicare for all. We've heard a lot of different requests for expanded programs from the federal level, and yet we know that brings loss of freedom at the local level. Looking forward, what constitutional reforms, if any, would you advocate to protect against authoritarian overreach in the future?
Well, I don't think we need reforms. We need to abide by the Constitution. It's not that we need to change anything in the Constitution. We need to actually follow it, and that's what's under threat, as always. And it's always the first two amendments that I think are the most important, and that are always the most beleaguered and under threat. And it is in this case, that's what we're looking at. First and Second Amendment infringements. I don't care listen, I want to make something clear. I don't care if it was China that was, we were doing these things for China, or if we were doing them for Mexico. It's just so happens that we're doing it for Israel. I don't care what foreign nation is dictating our policies. I wouldn't want it. So in fact, it's not important that it's Israel per se. What I'm saying is that it just happens to be, but I would be opposed to it if it was Mexico, if it was Saudi Arabia, whoever it was, that we were enacting legislation and executive orders that infringe our rights at the behest and on behalf of a foreign nation. That's just an outrage. We already have a large enough, an outrageous behemoth of a central government oppressing us. And now this central government is tethered to another foreign nation and doing its bidding on top of all that. This is double oppression, and we need to get out from under the yoke of it.
Well, this echoes what you emphasized throughout your book, The Great Reset and the Struggle for Liberty, Unraveling the Global Agenda, because in that you were explicating how so many policies of the recent administrations have come out to be enacting basically the enforcement arm locally within the borders of our country of globalist, unelected, anonymous powers that are above and beyond our government, to where our government just ends up being kind of middle management and not really in charge. Any further thoughts about that? Because you're pointing out one particular example right now that's fairly in the news, but this broader concern that you've emphasized for several years now.
Yes, I mean, look, the United States, in order to enforce globalist agendas, you have to have enforcement effectively at the local level. And, we've seen enormous impact of globalist imperatives at the local level, from zoning to, the way they're carving up streets to make it impossible to drive. I don't know about your town or city, but in Pittsburgh, they've ruined the traffic flow to make bike lanes, and effectively to try to establish Pittsburgh as a 15-minute city. They don't want you driving. And things like this is how it happens. They get these global imperatives, and they have to enact it locally in order to, make it stick. Otherwise, it's just pipe dreams on the part of these globalists. But they have gotten these things in place. And it is no surprise to me, speaking of the Great Reset as such, that Larry Fink is now the head of the World Economic Forum, that he took over for Klaus Schwab. Because BlackRock Inc. has been one of the major forces behind all of these imperatives about climate change and so forth. And they've been pushing it on American companies, DEI, climate change stuff, all this stuff. And now Larry Fink just officially took over the WEF. I believe he's been effectively running it. Klaus Schwab was mostly a villainous figurehead. But now we have the real villain in place, and that's Larry Fink of BlackRock. Now he's controlling the World Economic Forum to implement Agenda 2030, which is what the WEF's Great Reset is all about, is implementing the UN's Agenda 2030. And he's running BlackRock, which controls the financial realm in terms of at least $10 trillion under management, larger than many countries, if not most countries' gross domestic income or product. It's unbelievable. So we got a double whammy coming there. So I don't think that the Great Reset with the election of Trump, I don't think that's off the table at all. In fact, part of it is being enacted through Palantir. And the new arrangement that Palantir has with the government, a contract to establish an integrated surveillance system that integrates the information on individuals from all departments of government and pulls in other information about them to establish a digital identity for each and every American. That's what's underway. So, ironically, we thought voting for Trump would ward off the Great Reset. As it turns out, it's a backdoor Trojan horse for bringing it in.
One of the things that you mentioned there with some emphasis is the head of BlackRock taking over the World Economic Forum. What most people in the U.S. don't realize is that BlackRock, suddenly having erupted as this financial superpower over the past decade, is doing it with moms and pops retirement money. That it's the ordinary people of the United States in their 401ks, which have been signed over to ultimate management by BlackRock, and that they are then telling the CEOs and the boards of directors of all of those corporations that moms and pops own their stock in, how they will march and how high they'll jump. And most people have no idea that they're funding their own imprisonment. And yet, that's the pattern that you're a history professor, that's a pattern that history shows us has played out over time and time again. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, we're paying for our own surveillance. It is now, contracted with Palantir to pay for our own surveillance. We're paying for our own entrapment, in effect. I would just say that the Trump administration is allowing all of these things to take place under the guise of MAGA, under the imprint or imprimatur of MAGA. And in effect, Trump has just been, basically deforming the whole definition of what MAGA means. He's basically said it means whatever I say it means. I founded it anyway, so I'll say what it means. And it means all kind of abridgments of rights and surveillance and the establishment of digital identity. All of these things are underway. And, with the stable coin that they want to bring in, which were programmable, this is effectively the same thing as a CBDC. So what I want to say to your listeners is, and since this is a finance and liberty show, get out of the fiat currency somehow. Get out of it. Get into gold. Get away from fiat. It's going to be controlled through programming. They will determine what you're allowed to buy, when you're allowed to buy it, and so forth. All that is already on the table with stablecoin, which they're going to introduce.
Yeah, people who are accustomed to the convenience of whipping out their charge card or their debit card and just swiping your way through life say, gosh, that's convenient, and physical precious metals, for example, would be terribly inconvenient. But it's convenient until it's not. It's convenient until the little green light doesn't go on and the red light goes on and you don't know why. And they say, well, we don't know either. It's the algorithm. It's the AI algorithm that has some reason. We've been through that on our channel when certain videos couldn't be promoted, and it was the algorithm that had made the decision, and we couldn't even talk to humans who could tell us why. Have fun with that, and that's coming soon to a wallet near you. So Michael Rectenwald, historical expert and champion for states' rights, individuals' rights. How can people follow your work?
Yes, everything is on michaelrectenwald.com. That's michaelrectenwald.com. And then also my Substack, mrectenwald. Or just look for Rekt, R-E-K-T. That's my Substack. And I put a lot of my new stuff up there, then migrated over to the site later.
Well, we were grateful for your visiting here again on Liberty and Finance on this short notice, but we had to get you on with this flurry of actions that have been taking by the administration and how they're impacting ordinary people to help us look at it through the lenses that you're seeing it through, and that's that of freedom and of historical precedents and the Constitution. Thank you, Michael Rectenwald, for joining us again on Liberty and Finance.
My great pleasure. Thanks for having me.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for August 25th through September 1st, 2025, while supplies last. First this week, 1 ounce gold Britannia are just $60 over spot per ounce. Next, 1 10th ounce gold Canadian maples are only $35 over melt per coin. 1 ounce silver maples are just $2.89 over spot. And 1 ounce silver kangaroos are only $2.79 over spot per ounce. And with a 250 ounce monster box, they're the lowest priced monster box available. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.